And now on to Homes Today. The moderator here is Miss Audrey Forshey, who's a dynamic realtor at Remax Realty. Audrey is also a superb advisor. In each episode, she presents guests who provide $1 million advice pertaining to your homes. Today, her guest is Dan Deist from a company called Top to Bottom Services. And this said, Audrey questions Dan all about radon in the home. Let's catch this conversation.
Hello friends, thanks for joining us again today. I'm Audrey Forshey on Homes Today, and we have our friend Dan Deist from Top to Bottom Services joining us again today. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. It's fun.
Thanks. Awesome. I'm glad you like it. So today we're going to talk about radon gas and radon testing in your home and how that affects a real estate transaction. So first of all, what, Dan, is radon? What is it? Explain a little bit of that to us.
Maybe it's best if I go into like maybe a layman's term, because there is some things into that and it would probably be best suited, right? So think of it this way. Radon is a gas that's naturally emitted, from decomposing rock. Let's just take it down to that.
All right.
And what we found though is that gas that is actually the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States, next to smoking. And if you're a smoker, unfortunately, your probabilities are higher because there's something called plating out, where the radon gases actually stick to the smoke that you're inhaling, so you're actually getting double the radon dosage. So if you are a smoker,
Wow, that's scary. So if it's naturally occurring from rock, so it's seeping in probably from your basement, or it's surrounding the base of your house, is that usually where it comes in?
All gases, and radon is no exception. They all try to equalize their pressure, right? We learned that in school, right, when we had that. So we understand that the low pressure is going to be that basement or that first floor, right, on the slab on grade. And then you got the high pressure, which is the earth on the outside of the house. So you get the high pressure, low pressure, gas trying to equalize, and it starts to come in through the concrete, through the cracks, small openings, maybe a sump pump.
Okay, all right, so we've got that, and we think it's in the low part of the house. What about if I have a house and I don't have a basement? Do I have the potential for radon gas? Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, the radon is naturally, right? It's occurring, so it's not like I'm not going to have it because I have a force field around my house, right? It's always going to happen. Now, your probabilities are lower to be tested on a high level on a slab on grade, and that's what you're referring to, where you come home, you walk right in, right through the front door, no basement, right? Well, why is that? Because you only have one area of high pressure, which is that slab below you, right? That concrete below you. So, but when you have a finished basement or something like that, when you have all four sides, that's different. So you should still test. I mean, there is a probability. No one can see, unless you're God, you can't see what's underneath that slab at that townhouse or that condominium. So it's always best to test.
Okay. Over the years, I've heard people, not professionals, it's usually somebody just with an opinion, say that if you have a walkout basement, you wouldn't have radon. I don't think that's so.
No, I actually teach a class on radon to realtors, and one of the things I always say is, listen, we've all done home inspections, right? So if the basement door to walk out is damaged in any way, but maybe the insulation is worn, wouldn't that go in the report to say, hey, listen, why? Because we want to make a great seal. Right. So I always tell my clients, well, sure, if you want to go ahead and leave that basement door swung wide open all the time to get that air exchange, then you're good to go. But if you're going to keep that door shut, and of course you are, there's no difference.
That's right. So, okay. So now that we kind of know a little bit about what radon is, on the surface level, we know what it is, and we want to test for it. How do we test for it? What is involved in testing for radon?
Well, a homeowner can actually go to one of the big box stores, right? Like Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that, and they can actually purchase products. The Pro Labs does something where you can actually leave it out. Those are typically a charcoal canister, and it's actually absorbing it. You send it off to the lab, and then they test it. They see what your levels are based on what they thought the charcoal canister would have had at its original placement in the store, right?
Okay.
So the downside on that is you have a potential for a false positive. We don't know how long that's been sitting in Home Depot or Lowe's, right? Or how long it was sitting at the distribution center before it even made it to the big box. But it is a nice way of getting the baseline. So typically what I tell my clients that maybe they have a financial challenge, right? And they can't afford all these things because there are a lot of expenses go into when they're purchasing a house. So I said, if you can't afford a professional testing, that would be at least a good baseline to start on. And if you come in low, you're probably thumbs up. Now, there's also testing that you can do a continuous monitor. A lot of inspection companies will do that. That's something where we're actually monitoring the levels throughout the day. And because we know that radon actually fluctuates basically on all the outside environment. So if you have a really cold day, heavy snow, heavy rain, that's actually going to saturate that soil. It's going to be heavy on the outside. It's going to create a higher pressure and force more radon into the house. And that's why now you talk about a radon test for a transaction, it's a 48-hour time period.
Right.
Because if I just took a quick snapshot, maybe I took that snapshot when it was high, maybe
Yes.
I took it when it was low.
Yes.
So you have the continuous monitoring, and then within that actual vertical of that type of equipment, there's a lot of different providers within that one vertical, right? You have Ratalink, you have Pro Labs, you have all these other ones out
Right,
there.
right.
You just really want to talk with your inspector to see what equipment they use and how long they suggest you test for.
So when I have a radon contingency in my contracts for my buyers, I usually kind of do it in conjunction with the home inspection.
Smart.
So if like I've said before, my home inspection is usually between 7 and 10 days from the ratification, and I'll usually put 12 days for about 10 to 12 days for my radon inspection, and that's because you guys have to go over, set a canister, is usually
Set the equipment up, right?
yeah, and let it sit there for, we usually do it for 48 hours,
course,
right?
yeah. Yep.
So then we get the test results back from the lab to see what the radon levels come in at. So let's talk about the radon level. So the EPA says that 4.0 picocuries is...
Picocuries.
I know. I always
right?
say it wrong. I'm from the South. I say it is picocuries.
It's roof, rough.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. 4.0 is the magic number set by the EPA, as if it's 4.0 and above, you should remediate, and if it's under that, you should be relatively safe. But I know that a lot of my clients will say, I don't care, we're just going to remediate.
We're going to remediate, right.
So in remediation, so you, let's go back for a second. You said the cost of doing the inspection, that you could go to the big box store and buy those little canisters and
Right.
do them yourself. They're probably not more than $10 to
Right.
do them. So if you're doing a radon inspection with your equipment, how much does it usually cost a consumer?
Well, the consumer, right now the price bears about $150 to $165, depending on who you're using within the industry. You know,
Okay.
they all have their different price points. Right?
Okay.
Now, the great thing about what you're doing is you're extending that time period for an extra couple days. Well, we had just talked about if it's heavy rain, you might get higher levels. So you really want to make sure that if it's been a big rainstorm,
Okay.
that you got that extra time to maybe go 72 hours because you're going to get a better clear test. And also, I would tread lightly when it comes to the EPA. The government's never going to tell you anything is safe or unsafe, really, right?
Right,
When you come
okay,
down to that kind of
okay.
thing. So there is some wiggle room in there. And also that window there's things that you are doing that is so great that you don't even realize it. Because when you do that 3-day thing, that extra time,
Yes.
well, we also have to have closed house conditions met.
That's right.
Okay, so let's just say our home inspector shows up and all the windows are open because it's a great spring day, right? So
Right.
they're like, oh, this is awesome. Well, that's not awesome for the test. So we're actually going to have to say, hey, listen, we need to leave this in the house a little bit longer and make sure those closed house conditions are met. And there's a lot of things that go into that. No ceiling fans turning, no air movements, no exchange, air exchange
Right.
from outside units.
Right.
So, and to go along with the EPA level, okay, they're talking about a 4.0. There is, I know the guys that are looking at this, that are the inspectors, they're saying, hey, it's really not 4.0, it's this, it's 3.5, there's all these things, but it boils down to 4.0 picocuries.
And that's kind of what we use for the our contracts.
That's right.
And so if it's above or below that, that's when we will ask a seller to remediate the radon in the property. So,
Sure.
And so let's talk about radon remediation. Now, the inspectors, you can't do the remediation, or can you do the remediation?
Depending on what the inspector firm is actually associated with, if there's, let's say they're members of ASHI or something like that, they are not allowed to do any work on any of the houses they inspect for 1 year.
Okay.
So it wouldn't really dovetail really well with what they're trying to get
Right.
done. Now, I do know there are inspection firms like mine that have other ancillary services, other firms, other companies underneath the umbrella.
Right.
But we don't specifically do that. But
Okay.
you can get that. And remediation costs have come down significantly.
Yeah,
you know?
they have actually. And so when I need to call somebody to do radon remediation, what is it that they're going to do to get rid of the radon? How do I get it out of my house?
Well, there's two ways that I think would be easiest for your viewers to comprehend, right? There's
Okay.
a passive and then a non-passive.
Okay.
The passive system is kind of like what you're going to be seeing now in like Frederick County and even Montgomery County new construction, where they're already putting in a
Right.
white PVC vent that goes all the way up through the slab and up out through the roof.
Right.
We talked earlier about path of least resistance. We've talked a little bit about equalizing pressure. So if I have a tube that's open, the gas is going to follow that because it's going to say, wow, this is a lot easier to go through
Yeah.
than kind of going through that concrete.
Right.
Well, let's just say the source of radon is over in the far right-hand corner, and we have the passive system over here in the left. That's not going to be sufficient. So then what we're going to do is we're going to put a blower in there. And there are requirements of where the blower is located on the exterior. You can't have it inside the house. It can be in the attic space. And that blower is essentially sucking air out 365 days a year, just drawing that gases up through that tube and out.
And it needs to go out through the roof. Is that right?
There's now some cases now, if you're having a house that's already been built and we're doing a test and they find radon, they're not always going to go up through that because that's not going to be the easiest thing to cut through all these things.
Yeah.
So they're going to pop out the side of the house. When you're driving down the road and you see these bulbous boxes on the outside, they had radon and they did some remediation.
Okay. And you really, if you're at your house, you really don't want to sit next to that if that's on your deck or whatever, have the radon gas being blown on you, right?
Yeah. Well, it's going to extend up. Where it terminates is going to be much higher.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. What about, so in terms of the cost of remediation, how much is that? I see usually from about $900 to $1,500.
I think you're right on.
Yeah.
When it first came out, it was like a lot of things. People weren't remediating, right? So the costs were much higher.
Yeah.
I think you could actually say with your expertise of 30 years in the real estate industry that when it first came out, it was like, oh my God, that's like $2,000-$3,000 to fix that. Now it's just going down. Well, because now there's tons of people. You even asked me, do we do that? So as you start doing more and more company or doing the remediation, it drives down the price of remediation. So I think you're spot on. $800 to $1,200 is what you're going to be looking for.
Okay. And so I'm going to touch just a little bit on the fact that last year in October, Montgomery County passed a law, Montgomery County, Maryland, and it's the only county, as so far as I know, in the United States that they want to have a radon test done and completed within a year of the closing of a home that has sold since October 1st of 2016. So what that's kind of done, it's kind of a gray area where I'll have my sellers go ahead and perform a radon test and just go ahead and do it. Let's see if there's radon, and then we can just deal with it and remediate it. There are some exemptions. The town of Poolesville, Kensington, who else?
Tenleytown,
and Rockville are exempt from it. If it is an estate an estate you have to do it. If it's a foreclosure or if it is
condominium and certain requirements.
Yeah, there's some things that exempt a seller from having to do it, but they are having sellers and homeowners do it. I am always curious as I see some agents don't have their sellers do it, and then the onus is really on the buyer's agent and the buyers to go ahead and do that test. And I really feel like it's an important thing to affect your health and your family's health and stuff like that, that you really want to have this done no matter
and
really
the
cost.
testing's so simple now too.
And it's not that expensive. Even if you had to go to a big box store and test it for yourself, and if that came back high with
then
the
call
condition,
another company.
maybe to come back and confirm what the readings might be, and then you can consult with a professional to have it done. It needs to be done by a licensed contractor. I have known some sellers that have been in the construction industry, and they've actually done it themselves and ordered the parts and stuff.
Those are the ones that normally get posted on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
It's this great photo, right?
Yeah.
What were they thinking when they put this thing in
Yeah,
there?
and plus, if you're a seller, you don't really want to put the onus of a new buyer and their family's health and, just what may happen to them in the future, you don't want to own that. You need to have a licensed person
most
take
of those
care of it.
licensed companies also going to test after, right? You want to make sure it's gone.
That's right.
So you should have it post-tested.
And they'll come back in, and they have a gauge for you to tell if it's still working or if it's not working, and if you need to have them come back in. And a lot of times those guys, you know, guarantee their work and stuff, I think.
They almost all do.
Yeah.
But it is a good idea to continue to test. There are continuous monitors that home buyers can buy that actually plug right into a normal outlet, and it's monitoring the entire year.
Okay.
So that's always helpful.
All right, well, I think this is a great subject. Please look it up. Please do your research. Have a radon test. It's very important. You can have one even if you're not buying or selling a home.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Dan. Good
Absolutely.
to see you.
Glad to come.